Good afternoon. Today is July 15th, 2013. We are in the Heinz Suite in the Sheraton at AALL's annual meeting in Seattle. We are joined by Barbara Bintliff, the Joseph C. Hutchinson Professor in Law and Law Library Director at the University of Texas. This interview will be a part of the oral history of law librarianship on Spinelli's Law Library Reference Shelf. So we'll start at the very beginning. Barbara, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Houston, Texas, which has brought me full circle, as you can tell. But I really was raised in eastern Washington State in a little town called Ellensburg. It's about 120 miles from Seattle here. Very small town. My grandfather decided to move his cattle ranching operation from the Austin Hill Country to Washington, and we moved up here. Predictably, he moved back to Texas about a year later and left us here.
That's a huge move from Texas to, that's a very different temperature and atmosphere.
Yeah, pretty much everything was totally different, and they thought I talked funny. So it was a hard transition. I was in grade school and had lived in a house in the middle of Houston all my life, and suddenly found myself on a cattle ranch out in the country in a little bitty town. Ellensburg was a interesting town. It was very small. Small enough that we rode our horses to town in summer to go see our friends. That was terribly cool to cruise up and down 8th Street on your horse. But it was a really interesting lifestyle. It's one most kids don't get to have.
Absolutely. And then you went to Central Washington State College for undergraduate education. How did you choose this college and what did you study?
Well, Central is in Ellensburg. So where else would you go to school? Nobody said go to good school, get a good education. I had no idea what I was going to study, and so I just moved into the dorm, and I enjoyed Central immensely. It was a great experience. I started out as a performance voice major, but because I had to work and all the jobs were in the afternoon, as were the music classes, I quickly switched to math. Then I was going to be a chemistry major, or biology maybe. And then I decided to do the education sequence because I knew I had to have a job, and just didn't click with any of those teachers. Didn't enjoy education at all, and had enough credits to get a political science degree. So that's what I wound up graduating in, was political science.
And did you intend to take any particular career track with that degree? Did you have anything in mind?
No. Like so many college students, had no clue. I'm not quite sure how or when I decided to go to law school. I think it was a political science professor who said, you should think that you got pretty good grades, and you might think about law school. You will enjoy this. He wanted me to go to Hofstra because he was from New York City, and I of course was firmly wedded by this point to Washington State, which is how I wound up at the University of Washington.
Was that the only school you applied for? Or?
No, I of course applied to Gonzaga and Willamette. For some reason, not the University of Oregon, not Lewis and Clark. I don't think UPS-CLU existed at the time. Was admitted to all three, but I got in-state tuition at Washington, so.
And did you ever intend to practice?
Oh gosh, yes. I was going to be a corporate lawyer in a big building with a window that looked at Puget Sound, and make a lot of money and be glamorous, and boy, it just didn't work out that way.
Now, when did you know? Was it in your first year of law school, or you got to the third year and you realized this is not what I want to do?
I think really kind of second year-ish. I had a wonderful legal research and writing teacher, Rob Aronson, and Washington used the Rombauer book and used tenure-track doctrinal professors to teach legal research. And Rob was just wonderful because he would grade these papers and he'd say, you're fine, you're fine, you're passing, everything's fine. But he said, have you thought about being a librarian? He said, my mother's a librarian, and it's such a cool profession. And he said, your footnotes are longer than your papers, and you clearly get into this research part. And he said, just think about it. And so I thought about it, and I got married in law school, and my husband was working on his PhD, And we knew that we would have to move around a bit. And of course, I was at the University of Washington with a great law librarianship program. And I thought, well, nice credential, easy to move. Little did I know it would have been much easier just to take another bar exam. But went to library school and just loved it.
And did you do any sort of research or visit the library, school classes before you decided to apply? Or you
Heavens no. That would have been like, conscious. Just did it.
And you've worked at a number of institutions since you graduated from library school, public, private, academic firm, but you've gravitated towards the academic. What draws you to and has kept you in law schools?
Well, I think despite those education classes at Central, I really do like teaching, and I like law students. I like the excitement and the intellectual life of a law school, and I always felt like you had a little more freedom and independence in a law school than you had in a firm. You could explore different things. Law schools, you could do a little more specialization. I am just in awe of what goes on in law firm libraries. I mean, those people can research like no one we've ever met, but I just loved the educational atmosphere, and I always liked public education better than private. I think the ideals of accessibility and what used to be affordability, helping everybody achieve the American dream, moving up, getting an education, that just always appealed to me.
So in law schools, having worked at a number of them now, what major changes have you seen in education and how we teach law students?
Well, now you're dating me. I started in this field just as Lexis and Westlaw were showing up. And at the University of Denver, we had a Westlaw terminal locked up in a little room, and all it had on it was headnotes, which is how Westlaw started. And so as librarians, we had the password on a little piece of paper, and we would go unlock the room and then close the door and enter the password, and then we'd come back out and we'd kind of like hang around while whatever student was trying to find whatever information he or she could find. And I think about those days, and then you look at the technology we have on our desks and we carry around with us and we offer to students. It's just, I'd say 0 to 60, but it's more like 0 to 1,000.
And would you say research is easier or harder because of that?
If you're doing good research, it's a lot harder because there's so many different sources and there are so many ways to get caught up and go down the wrong path. And the digests and the annotations and codes, I think, presented a clearer path. I just think that it was a little more straightforward to do research when I started, and now it's just, I mean, it's like a kid in a sandbox. You just have all this whole world, but what are you going to build with it?
And did you have a teaching role at every law school that you've been at?
Yeah, actually, I started teaching kind of one-off legal research classes at the University of Denver and went into the administrative law class. That's where I fell in love with administrative law research, and taught them the CFR and the Federal Register and did environmental law and tax law one-offs there. And at Colorado, we started the advanced legal research class. I taught comparative law, a comparative legal systems class. And then now at Texas, teaching the law libraries. It's a legal information class.
Great. And we'll come back to the teaching law library students, but I'll move on briefly to mentors. In an article for the Law Library Journal in 1999, you listed Al Coco, Marion Gallagher, Roy Mursky, and Oscar Mill as your mentors. What one lasting lesson did you learn from each of them?
Well, yeah, I think in order. Marion Gallagher was this amazing, strong woman, role model. Nothing is going to get in her way. She was like what I wanted to be, just this woman making a, she was an extraordinary personality, and, you know, a tenured woman faculty member in the 1950s, and just an amazing woman, and traveled to Africa and just nothing stopped her. So I would say she was this great role model of a strong, successful woman. Al was a wonderful librarian. He was so committed. He was a great teacher. He was a wonderful boss. And boy, did he know how to have fun. And you know, I think he gave permission to me, to everybody who worked there, to have fun at work. You know, it doesn't have to be work. It can also be fun. Let's see, Roy was a think outside the box guy. He was, you know, the library was where you start, but it wasn't where you ended. And his amazing creativity and imagination, you know, he just, there were no bounds. And it was a wonderful lesson to learn that I could do anything fit with librarianship. Oscar, on the other hand, was this superb technician. There was no detail too small, and his records were immaculate. And that was a good lesson to learn about the importance of making sure that you could retrace your steps and find everything and have it very organized. Anyone who's seen my desk would laugh when I say that, but Oscar really did teach me a lot about organization and detail work.
And now you've actually become a mentor to many other law librarians.
A frightening thought, isn't it?
It's wonderful. So to expand that mentorship to the masses, if you had one piece of advice to give to new law librarians today, what would it be?
Don't limit yourself. This field can be defined in infinite ways. There's just no reason for you ever to be bored. Don't limit yourself. Explore, learn new things, challenge yourself. It is a limitless field.
And is a lot of that done by just taking opportunities that are presented to you, or would you encourage them to actively seek out such opportunities?
Yes, both of the above. If someone asks you to write an article or be on a program or develop a new service, go for it, go do it. Obviously there are constraints. Check with your boss, check with your director, you know, make sure everything's copacetic. But gosh, if you think of something or if somebody comes to you, that's the beauty of this field. You really do not have to be constrained by, you know, what's on your narrow little job description. It's just a limitless opportunity.
And the opportunities that you've had, were there any that frightened you or gave you pause and you did it anyway?
Most of them, probably. The first time I wrote an article, I thought, oh my God, you know, somebody else is going to read this. I will be exposed for the charlatan that I am. The first time you manage people, you just think, oh my gosh, this is so hard. And yet, you know, if you want to have a career and move on, you have to do that. And, you know, going on the tenure track was frightening to no end. Your first class that you teach for credit, it's all yours. You know, life is all about risk-taking. And you can either kind of wither in your own little corner, or you can get out there and learn and challenge yourself and do things.
And your advice for law library directors, new law library directors, would it be the same advice or different advice?
I think for the newest of the new, I'd say be careful. Learn the job, learn your people, and when you're ready, take the jump and start doing what you want to do. But I mean, that's the beauty of being a director, is you kind of get to define your own job. Yes, there are things you have to do, but you're in charge of your time. You can define your job, and you really can explore so many different areas that you'll know when you're ready.
You have been tremendously active in the profession. Among your achievements, you have served as president both of SWAL and AALL, and you're one of the founding members of the AALS section on law libraries. Of your many professional accomplishments, what is your most lasting memory?
Well, I'll tell you, I have always thought of myself as the disaster president. I was AALL president in September 2001.
You've been tremendously active in the profession. Among your achievements, you have served as president both of SWAL and AALL, and you are one of the founding members of the AALS section on law libraries. Of your many professional accomplishments, what is your most lasting memory?
I think my most lasting memory happened when I was AALL president, which was unfortunately included September 11, 2001. That was, as everyone who lived through it knows, an incredibly emotional time. I spent much of that week on the phone with AALL members, and we just, oh God, this is so horrible. But I remember writing a little email message and posting it, I think, to Law Live, saying, this was a senseless act, and our thoughts and prayers are with the people in New York, and I sent that out, thinking it was just, I had to say something, do something, and I started getting these anonymous email messages from people who said America deserved this, and it was not senseless, it was the right thing to do. And I got 2 or 3 of those, and I finally, kind of intemperately, shall we say, responded to one. Basically, I said, "You spineless coward, if you'd like to discuss this, give me a name and we will have a debate." And sent that. And then started getting death threats, and drove around for the next week with my clothes in the trunk of my car.
Did you ever find out who?
It could have been somebody in the next office, it could have been somebody in South America, who knows? It was an anonymous email. The messages, the America deserved this messages stopped. I only had 2 or 3 of the death threats, but it was a very sobering time.
And how did you continue to be productive despite all of these types of distractions? And that's a very, very minor term for what you face.
Well, you assumed that I was productive during that time. I was a basket case like everyone else, and then I had this moron at the other end of the email chain. Yeah, I think like everyone else, it took a while to be able to focus and to get back to work. And we were designing a new building in Colorado at the time, and I was chairing the building committee, and we had a building committee meeting that day. And we're fussing about where the doors go, and everyone's just like, who cares? It was a period, a week or more before you really could get back to focus.
Because you were active in leadership positions in all of these entities, what were the major differences between them?
Between?
Like SWAL and AALL, or AALL and ALSIS, or AALS, sorry.
Well, of course, my role in AALS has been relatively minor compared to being president of AALL or being president of SWAL. But it's really a matter of scale. In SWAL, it is this wonderful, warm, collegial, really a fairly stable group. I mean, you just really feel a home with the people in your regional chapter. At AALL, it was this whole national stage, and you suddenly were meeting with the president of ALA and SLA, and attending these meetings and sitting on stages, and it's like, wow. It's a matter of scale, and yet you're in many ways doing the same thing. You're representing your organization to others. The chapters were just a wonderful training ground for AALL itself. I really would encourage anybody who thinks they want to be very involved in AALL, start at your chapter level. You'll really learn how to kind of maneuver and negotiate a professional association at a much smaller and less threatening scale.
So in AALS, you were one of the founding members that created the section on law libraries. Was there a triggering event that caused you to think that this was a good idea, or was there some other inspiration?
There was a really high-powered group, of which I was the trailer, I guarantee you. Lolly Gassaway, Sally Wyant, Dan Freeling, Rita Rush, and I think I was the only other member. We were the founding board, and there was a very distinct desire to put law libraries on the map at AALS. We wanted to have a section of our own. We wanted that kind of visibility. We wanted to show that we had, there was intellectual content to what we did, and it was very much an effort to raise the level of recognition of what law librarians do. And so the section was founded for that purpose, just to get law librarians on the map and to get us involved in the life of AALS.
And prior to the creation of that section, were there programs every year on law librarianship, or were there not?
Well, there had been for many years a committee on law libraries. And so the committee, as many AALS committees do, would put on a program. And this was just an attempt to enhance the visibility, just to raise it and do a little bit more.
Great. Much as you've assumed leadership roles in library associations, you have also done the same at your schools, possibly even more so at your schools. For example, you served as the chair of the University of Colorado's Faculty Assembly Executive Board for 2 terms, terms during which the university faced a great many challenges. How did you become involved with your schools at this level?
Well, like many librarians all over the U.S. in law school libraries, the law school had a seat on the Faculty Assembly Library Committee, and the dean asked me to fill that seat. And I, of course, had no idea what the Faculty Assembly was and what the Library Committee did, but there was a delicious irony that I was on the oversight board for the main campus library. I kind of liked that, thought that was fun, and was on that committee off and on a number of times. And at some point, I was asked to serve on another BFA, Boulder Faculty Assembly Committee, and I was on the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. Shockingly, they wanted one of the law faculty. And then I was on the Faculty Affairs Committee, which was dealt with faculty grievances, essentially, a lot of confidential work. And after a couple of years on that committee, I was sitting there after a meeting thinking, you know, what have I gotten myself into? And the current chair of the BFA sat down next to me and said, well, I want to ask you to do something. And I said, oh, you know, sure, whatever you need, just, you know. And he goes, well, I want you to chair I want you to chair next year. And I thought he meant the Faculty Affairs Committee. And I said, fine, you know. I was kind of equivocal about it. And he said, no, I want you to chair the BFA next year. And I'm like, whoa. And I had to sit down and think about that for a couple of days. And he said, you know, we have a stable chancellor. Our president's new, but she's going to be here for a while. Everything looks good. You're not going to have anything but a parking problem to deal with. You can do it. You'll be fine. I'll be here. Everything's great. And I've said, well, you know, hadn't had a woman chair the BFA for 20 years. And the last woman to chair the BFA was the business librarian. And I thought, oh, this is yeah, women librarians. Yeah, we're going to take over the BFA. You know, little knowing what was in store.
So there was no hint at that time of either the Churchill.
Nobody knew that the football team was using sex and drugs to recruit players. So my first year, we had the giant athletic scandal that saw, over the course of 2 years, the president, the chancellor, the athletic director, and the football coach all leave the university. Never thought I'd be interviewed by CNN or the New York Times or the Christian Science Monitor. I had a friend send me an email. She said, I'm lying in bed in London watching you on CNN. But my husband finally agreed that this was the big time when ESPN interviewed me. I had no idea any of this was going to happen. And of course, my first inclination was to go hide somewhere, you know, and if they can't find me, they can't interview me. But then I thought, yeah, I can't do that. And so it really was baptism by fire.
And did the university relations people serve as a conduit for these requests, or did they contact you? Did the media outlets contact you?
They'd show up on my doorstep. They showed up at my office. They called directly. I mean, NPR calls me, and you just have to be ready to go. It just was really a lesson in being prepared and not answering the phone because they were there.
That's just amazing. Is this level of engagement something you would encourage librarians to seek out?
If you can. And of course, I could never have done really almost any of the things I did without an amazing staff. Jane Thompson, Georgia Briscoe, Karen Marchese of Colorado carried the place, and allowed me to be out and about doing all these things. They're extraordinary. But if you don't have that wonderful support, you still have to do your day job. I mean, you don't get release time to go do this stuff. And you have to be prepared to put in some extra time and some extra effort and really count on your coworkers to help you through. But you learn so much about the university. You really understand what a university is and how it operates, how the pieces function, and how the athletic director really is in charge of the whole show. You learn so much that it is one of the best leadership academies you could ever attend. But you do have to have your job covered. You do have to be able to take care of your primary business. You have to get your boss's permission. So it was a fabulous experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. And there have been a number of law librarians I know, James Duggan, Sally Wise, Carol Breedemeyer, have all chaired their faculty assemblies. I'm sure there are others, and we would all say the same thing. It was a great experience.
You've also contributed greatly to the development of library scholarship through your own writings and also through the development of the Boulder Statement of Legal Education and the associated conference to mentor scholars. What impact do you think scholarship has had on the profession, and which pieces or authors have influenced you most?
Well, scholarship is really our shared knowledge, our shared consciousness. It allows us to continue our professional development. It intrigues us, it annoys us, and enrages us, and makes us think. And we really move forward by this exchange of ideas, by sharing our thoughts, by asking hard questions. And it is indispensable to professional life. You can't have a profession if you don't have a professional literature. And I am so heartened by the developments in the last years in scholarship on legal information topics, on legal research, on organization and management of information, copyright and freedom of information. I mean, wonderful, amazing, absolutely relevant topics. I think we have all had an enhanced opportunity to learn more over the last couple of years. I feel like every piece I read is the most influential piece I've ever read because there's always something new and interesting and different. I love the works of Frederick Charles Hicks. I mean, just this wonderful trailblazer legal bibliography, legal research guy, and the people who wrote the first legal research books. And yet today I look at people like Lolly Gassaway who have just moved law librarianship scholarship into substantive law scholarship. And I look at all the new authors we've had in the various Boulder conferences, and each one has brought a unique perspective and new knowledge and wonderful ideas to the table. There's no way I could pick anyone else. I'm in awe of anyone who can get their words down on paper, because it's hard.
Do you think there's anything else that our profession needs to do to encourage further scholarship?
I really think we're on the right track. We have a couple of workshops now. The Dick Danner and Kleinfelter's workshop that I hope they do again, the Boulder Conference. There's the Beer and Edits group that has begun to meet and help each other, and there are just little informal groups of law librarians around the country who are sharing papers, and I think it's a wonderful golden age for our profession's growth and development. It's just a great time.
Another common theme throughout your career is improving education for law students, library students, and emerging library directors. What gaps do you see in education for each of these populations?
How many hours do we have? I think, well, first of all, let me kind of focus on what I know, which is legal research, law librarianship. I mean, I could talk for hours about what new attorneys need, but I really don't have that kind of grounding. But I can tell you, they don't know how to legal research. And the fact that we're talking about it now, and it's on the table, and the writing instructors now know that the librarians are agitating about legal research instruction, and we're trying to develop a pedagogy for teaching it. And making it contextual and analytical and iterative and much more intellectual. We've got to move past saying, oh, legal research is simple. You put a couple of words in a search box. It's not simple. It is complex and sophisticated, and it's what we're paid big bucks for to teach, and as attorneys, what they're paid big bucks for to practice is the knowledge of how to do it. And we have got to continue to push for enhanced legal research education for our law students, because it is simple to put a couple of words in a search box, but to come back with relevant and contextual results is a whole different story, and we really have to continue to work on that. By the same token, I think our new law librarians need to understand that too, and we have to really help define a pedagogy for teaching legal research not only to law students but also to new law librarians, and helping new law librarians understand better how to teach and convey legal information and legal research. We're in an exciting time in terms of what our tech services people can do with, you know, online catalogs and the creation of metadata and new tools and new formats, but we kind of don't have education yet that is fully preparing these folks to take advantage of all the opportunities and all of the abilities of our various systems. And, you know, we're playing a little catch up now, but we'll get there. It's just, you know, there's one step forward and then the other step forward, and we've got to really work together to make sure that we're moving down the right path.
And for library students, is there a particular type of curriculum you have in mind?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think for library school students and for people who aspire to be directors in particular, I think we have to give them a better picture of what goes on in libraries. We don't teach employment law. We don't teach office behavior. We don't teach ADA. We don't teach budgeting. All these basic kind of things that, as you know, as a director, you're doing this stuff all the time, and you're learning it by the seat of your pants. So that's what I am teaching right now in the law libraries class that I am teaching. It's a cross-listed class. It has law students and library school students. And we talk about the Freedom of Information Act, and we talk about how copyright applies in libraries, and we do interviewing and why you can and can't ask certain questions, and we talk about evaluating and supervising and hiring and firing and coaching and, you know, all this kind of stuff that you just don't get trained on in most programs. And I really want the people who leave, whether they be law students moving into a law firm or library school students moving into a library setting, I want them to be prepared, because as professionals, you are managing people.
And is this a case study approach class, or how do you have it structured?
It's a seat of the pants kind of class. We do a little bit of background reading on, you know, the development of the depository library system and how libraries have assumed the moral authority for presenting government information. The responsibility of libraries to present that information is not in any statute. It's just something we've agreed to do. And we talk about the Freedom of Information Act and how that might play out in your library. We talk about copyright for reserves And then we do role-playing, and we interview each other, and we discipline difficult staff. And I have them write mission statements and strategic plans and reports, and it's just...
How many credits is this class?
I know, it's only 3 credits, but the students are just like, wow, no one ever told us about this kind of stuff. They really enjoyed it, which made me feel good, because, you know, it's almost a week to week. Well, what should we do this week?
That's fantastic. What is the course called?
It's called Law Libraries. And it fulfills the skills requirement for the UT Law School. So I have to have a lot of skills kind of stuff, writing and presentations.
And actually it's a good crossover, because if you're covering budgeting, a lot of the issues that alumni are now saying that they wish, or law firms are saying they wish law students had, is financial literacy. So that definitely helps them there.
Yeah.
So we're going to switch gears again and go back to AALL.
Okay.
And just to see, do you have any memories of your first AALL meeting?
Yes, I do. My first AALL was 1979. I have dated myself. In San Francisco. I shared a room. I don't remember how many of us were in that room. At least 3, maybe 4. I was clueless. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. I didn't know what AALL was in terms of what a professional organization was. Marian Gallagher said, "You'll be going." And so I said, "Sign me up." I was shocked. What are all these adults doing, going to all these classes? You know, the concept of continuing education was new to me. And that was the heyday of AALL, where every vendor had a suite with heavy hors d'oeuvres, and the wine and the beer and the alcohol flowed, and they gave away. I remember one of the women I stayed with came back to the room late at night with a portfolio, a little briefcase kind of thing. She said, "Look, this was free." You know, and we immediately all got dressed and ran out and got our portfolios, and we had no idea what was going on, and yet it was so exciting, and there were these new things we could learn about, and all these people, and it was in San Francisco. It was gorgeous. We walked down to Chinatown. It was this amazing experience. You know, life-changing. This was really cool. So yeah, I remember that well.
So in the years that you've been in librarianship and seen all the changes, what do you see as the biggest change over that period of time and moving forward into the future?
Well, one of the things that I have become aware of is the intentionality, the consciousness of the way people approach this profession. There are a lot of people who look at librarianship now as a very intellectual profession. Not to say that there weren't people previously who did, but I think many in my generation kind of fell into it. We didn't really want to practice, we didn't quite know what else to do. And there are so many young people I speak to today who said, you know, I did practice, I tried that.
In your years in law librarianship, what is the major change that you've seen during that entire time and going forward into the future?
I think one of the changes that I have become aware of is the degree to which so many people are very intentional in librarianship as a career choice. Not to say that those of us who have been here for a while didn't intend to go to library school. Obviously we did. But there is, it seems like there's a greater consideration of librarianship as an intellectual career, as a career path that offers many, many opportunities. I feel like there's just a different level of consciousness on the part of so many of the younger librarians who really seem to be looking for a bigger kind of picture in their career in librarianship than many of us did. And I think because that bigger picture is there's the technology side, there's the copyright side, there's the information creation and metadata side, and there's the teaching side. I think the profession itself has expanded dramatically, and people are really looking at it now as offering tremendous opportunity, much more opportunity than 30 years ago that we had. So I just feel like there's a different level of consideration that a lot of people are putting into their career in librarianship.
As we near the end of the interview, I wanted to give you a chance to cover anything else that we may not have already talked about.
I think the one thing I want to cover is a thank you, Michelle, for a wonderful interview. Thanks to Hein. I know that Pat Keogh and Frank Hodek have been very involved in this process, and it's a wonderful way to begin to capture memories and personal recollections that will allow for a big picture of this profession. So many thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Barbara, for taking the time to visit with us today and sharing your thoughts about the profession and your involvement in it. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome.